Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Get Wedding Ready with me, Wara Manola. So today I'm all glammed up and ready for a wedding, but I decided I need to speak about something that's really important, something I really want to get off my chest. So today the video I've got for you is how to choose the right wedding vendors. Now, this topic, oh my gosh, this topic is so important because choosing the right wedding vendors can make or break your wedding. I had my wedding and I went through my own fair share of, wedding vendors. So in this video, I'm going to give you quick tips on choosing the right wedding vendors, how you know a wedding vendor is right for you, the ones to run away from, and also I'm going to, just tell you a bit about the horror stories that I had with my wedding vendor so that you can, learn a thing or two and hopefully you don't make the same mistake that I did. So let's get straight into it. So the first thing with choosing your wedding vendors, I would say, is do your research. First of all, you need to follow as many wedding blogs as you can on Instagram. I'm talking the Bella Niger weddings, the African sweetheart weddings, the bridal lookbooks, the brides, nuptials and more, Nigerian wedding diet. Oh, you need to follow all these people. Why? Because they're always posting work of vendors. There's so many vendors out there, and if you follow these people, you would have an unlimited pool of vendors, from makeup artists to photographers to bridal, designers. They cover like all the spectrum. So it's so important for you to follow these, wedding blogs. Look for the kind of wedding vendors out there. Look for the makeup artists that you might be interested in. Look for the hairstylists that you might be interested in. A really good tip that I can give you is to use the hashtag. So if you're looking for a makeup artist, use the hashtag. And if you're based in Lagos, for example, Lagos MUA. MUA stands for makeup artist, or Lagos photographer, Lagos baker, Lagos, caterer, Lagos decorator. Use these hashtags because they're so important. All these vendors hashtag their work. So if he's a photographer, he would, hashtag his work. So it's so important for you to use social media as a tool to help you look for your wedding vendors. The next thing I would say under doing your research is obviously, looking through their work. If you found a photographer you like, go to his website. If you found a makeup artist that you like, go to her website, go to their Instagram page, see the work that they're doing. You need to see the consistency. Consistency is so important with wedding vendors, because if a wedding vendor is slaying look after look after look after look, at least you have some, confidence that this person, might be good for me. You need to also look at comments. You need to see what are people saying about these people. Are they good comments? Are they bad comments? Look at reviews, the reviews online. What are people saying about these wedding vendors online? Are they saying they're a good choice? Are they saying they're not a good choice? It's so important for you to do your research. Ask her as well. If you've seen a bride that has used this wedding vendor, send her a DM or email her and say, hey, I'm thinking of using this makeup artist. How was she to work with? It's so important for you to do your research before you choose a wedding vendor, because you cannot base your wedding vendor over what they put on their website or on Facebook. You have to do your research. You have to dig deeper. So the next tip I have for you for choosing the right wedding vendor is not choosing the vendor over hype. What I mean by hype, I mean this wedding vendor has, over thousands and thousands of followers. They've been featured in magazines and everywhere. Don't get me wrong, the really good wedding vendors will be popular. They will be featured, everywhere. We know the makeup Mario, who does Kim Kardashian's makeup, there will be hype, but it's so important for you to choose the right wedding vendor and not the best. Keyword, if you take anything away from this video, I want you to take away what I've just said. Choose the right wedding vendors and not the best. Now listen, what I mean by this is the person who you think is the best wedding vendor might not be the wedding vendor for you. I've had my fair share of this. I've literally picked wedding vendors because of their hype. I've secured them. I didn't even go for a trial. I was like, yes, I've got this person, and at the end of the day, I paid the price and it was all hype. So you need, and I repeat, you need to make sure you don't choose wedding vendors over their hype. Again, as I said in my first point, go to the comment box, ask around and see what people are saying about them. There's so many horror stories that I've heard of wedding vendors that are celebrity wedding vendors. So you want to make sure you're not a victim of one of those. So the third tip I have for you for choosing your wedding vendors is choose a wedding vendor that can bring your vision to life. This is so important because what you want is different from what the other bride wants. You might have specific, you know, instructions. You might want your things done in a specific way, and this wedding vendor is used to doing things their way. So it's so important for you to choose someone who can, you know, bend over backwards and, you know, bring your vision to life. You want someone who's, you know, flexible enough, someone who is creative enough, you know, to work with your vision. I've interviewed a bride who literally told the wedding vendor, I want dark lips for my wedding, and the vendor said, what? Dark lips? She said, yes, I want dark lips for my wedding. And this is Duni of Duty in 2015. So this wedding vendor trusted her. She did it. It came out beautiful. Another wedding vendor might have just said, I'm not doing this, you know, I don't want to tarnish my work or whatever. So make sure you choose a wedding vendor that can bring your vision to life, you know. Ask them the right questions, you know, throw them out of the box, you know, let them come back with you with suggestions. Illustrations are so important, especially with bridal designers. It's so important for a bridal designer to be able to illustrate and show you what your dress is going to look like. It's so important for your photographer to, you know, take you to places that he's never shot before, you know, tell you to do poses that you've never done before. So it's so important for you to work with wedding vendors that can bring your vision to life, so your wedding doesn't end up looking like the next bride's wedding. You know, you can bring yourself to your wedding and it can stand out. The next tip I have for you is so important. When choosing your wedding vendors, it's so important for you to visit them. It's so important for you to meet this person face to face. If you're not in the same country, that is okay. Maybe have a Skype meeting, or maybe send your mom or someone who is in the same country to visit that person. This is so important because someone over the phone, you know, is different from face to face. Face to face, you can tell if you can, you know, if you gel with that person. That means if you have a good rapport with that person, if the person is respectful, if the person is, you know, professional. You see all this when you're face to face with that person. Whereas when you're texting or on Instagram or social media, you don't see all of that. Remember, social media shows you what, you know, the person wants you to see. Ask them the right questions, you know, throw questions that'll throw them off balance. Make sure that, you know, you get a good feel of this wedding vendor before you book them. Another thing about face-to-face is make sure you go for trials. If it's your makeup artist, if it's your hairstylist, especially if it's the person who's decorating your hall, go to their studio, go to their, you know, warehouse. When I was looking for someone to decorate my wedding, I went all the way, 2 hours train ride, you know, all the way to Bradford to visit the person who was decorating. I saw my stage, you know, in his warehouse. I saw my centerpieces in his warehouse. I saw chandeliers and everything. So we brought the vision to life, and I saw that. And if I didn't see that, I would have been panicking and it would have just been a surprise on the day. But I did. So it's so important for you to visit your wedding vendor, see them face to face, and, you know what it's like to work with them. So my next tip on choosing your right wedding vendors is pay that deposit quick. You have to secure that deposit. Remember, when you're looking for wedding vendors, thousands of brides and grooms are looking for wedding vendors as well. So the best thing for you to do is, as soon as you choose the wedding vendor you want, based on doing your research, based on meeting them face to face, based on asking around and inquiring about them, all the tips I've given you, once you're secure and you know this is the person I want, pay that deposit. Vendors do not joke with their money, because there's so many people that would not pay vendors and do, oh, I'll pay you later and all of that. So vendors, once you pay that deposit, you've told them that I want you and I'm serious. So it's so important for you to pay a deposit, sign a contract, and I'll get to that later, and secure that wedding vendor. Don't tell that vendor, oh, I want to, you know, I want to book you, and then you go back and you're doing whatever you're doing. If anyone else comes and pays that money, that vendor is gone. So as soon as you find a wedding vendor that you absolutely like, pay that deposit. The good thing about deposits is they're usually 10%. Sometimes they're 50%, but if they're 10 or 15% and you see someone else you like, not a lot of money to lose. So the next tip I'm going to give you is read your contract. It's so important for you to read your contract. Whatever you're doing in life, even if it's for you to get a lawyer, please read the fine print. Wedding vendors are going to put terms and conditions, and it's so important for you to read your contract because, number one, you need to know what you're paying for. You need to know what you're paying for and what you're not paying for. For example, if your vendor is coming from someone else or traveling, you need to know if you're going to, you know, pay for their flight or pay for their accommodation. I've had my fair share of this. A week before my wedding, one of my vendors told me that I had to book their flight and accommodation. 1 week before their wedding, I had to manufacture a flight ticket and accommodation because my vendor didn't tell me at the time I was booking them. That's another story for another day. But you need to make sure that you look through your contract. There's some vendors that also say that you're going to pay for their assistants. You're going to pay for their, you know, the person who's coming with them. This is not included in the package. That is included in the package. If you lose something, you're going to pay double the price. if you don't return something, especially if you're renting, you're going to buy a new one. You need to make sure you read your contract and you understand it so you know what you're getting into. My hotel lost my tablecloths, you know, at my wedding, and I had to pay the vendor because in his contract it said that if you lose anything, you pay full price. Now I skimmed through it because obviously I was excited that I found someone finally for my tablecloth, but I didn't really read it in detail. So afterwards, when I had to pay that money, I was like, wow. You know, wow. So make sure you read the fine print, make sure you understand it, and make sure you understand what you're paying for. There's so many vendors that, you know, don't include all what you're paying for. You don't include what you're paying for, and at the end of the day, closer to your wedding day, I start asking you manufacturing things that, oh, you need to pay for this is included, and you're like, you didn't tell me this in the beginning. So the last tip I have for you for choosing your wedding vendor: always have a plan B. I cannot stress this enough. Always have a plan B. Anything can go wrong. Wedding vendors can be sick. Wedding vendors sometimes might have someone who's paying more money. I've had that happen to me, and they will cancel you at the last minute. You have to have a plan B. It's so important. Anything can happen, whether it be for your makeup artist, person doing your food. You know, think about it. What if something goes wrong? You know, how will I cope? If you have a photographer you booked, if something goes wrong, do I have a Canon camera sitting at home, or do I know someone who has a really good camera that can take pictures if worst comes to worst? If worst comes to worst, do I have a friend that can do my makeup, you know, that's very good at doing makeup, and we can, you know, put, you know, hands together if worst comes to worst? Do I have someone who can do food? Can my mom do the food, you know, with her friends last minute if worst comes to worst? Also, sorry, I need to stop doing this. There's no quotes, it's the real deal. And also, if worst comes to worst as well, you know, what will happen to my decoration? You know, can I, you know, get fresh flowers last minute and, you know, tie them together and put them on the tables? If worst comes to worst, can I use the centerpieces that the hotel already have that I didn't really like in the beginning? So you need to make sure you have a plan B. Don't just bank on a plan A. I have so many stories of last minute wahala. What I mean by last minute wahala is last minute problems where people have, you know, wedding vendors have cancelled on their clients, or, you know, have sent someone else. You just need to make sure you have a plan B so you're not caught, you know, off guard. So now, these are my tips on, you know, finding a wedding vendor. You have to do your research. You have to make sure you don't go for a wedding vendor over their hype, over their popularity. It might shock you. Also, you need to make sure that you meet this wedding vendor face to face. It's so important for you to meet this wedding vendor, you know, face to face. Lastly, it's so important for you to look through the contract. Look through the contract, read through the contract, and make sure you know what you are paying for. Also, have a plan B. So quickly, I just want to give you tips on how you know the person is a good wedding vendor.